First of all, we must understand the thinking patterns of masculinistalists. It's easy to understand it from the perspective of child psychology. Children who have not received social training healthily, and equally only learn to respond to external stimuli with animalistic instincts, and pursue the rules of maximizing their own interests. They will successively abstract the others independent of themselves into such a simple division: those who follow me, those who go against me, and those who make rules. Those who follow me are friendly people who can communicate peacefully. The image of those who go against me basically comes from other children who compete with me for candies and toys. The image of those who make rules probably comes from the guardian or the kindergarten teacher. Phallocrat can use this set of thinking to adulthood by violence. He regards women as deteriorated versions of men, so the orderer should allocate more and better resources to him. If the order does not do this, he will believe that orderers are biased. In order to maximize his interests of being a man, he must maximize the number of those who follow him and minimize the number of those who go against him. To achieve this goal, he must always game with the orderer to urge it make rules that consider his benefits first, like making the order be lenient towards those who follow him, and severely punish those who go against him. Of course, the order does not have to be specific individuals. It can be social sentiment and public opinions influenced by morality and law in specific historical periods. The goal of the game is to make the cost of making the orderer accept the child's proposal less than the cost of rejecting the child's proposal. The simplest thing is to win more support than the opposition to enhance his own power. For example, the incidents of women falsely accusing men of secretly filming sexual harassment, that masculinists relish, even if their cause is endless incidents of voyeuristic recording women to sell the videos to men, and some contradictions are obviously misunderstandings from women. The masculinists still insist on using the words fraudulently and false accusation of more serious words to label the woman as an unforgivable sinner, and unite to push the relevant popularity far higher than the incidents of voyeuristic recording women that occur every day. The most essential mean is establishing collective conditioned reflexes. They will use some words as conditioned stimulus, such as the common sayings mentioned before, like, a woman's virtus increases with her ignorance. The most poisonous things are women's hearts. Women always misplace their misery, and femme fatale. From the details, many derogatory characters with radicals linked to feminization can also be counted. Certain words and phrases serve a dual function as coded signals. Others may not understand what they mean, but people in the circle are very clear about their obvious aggression in calligraphic colors, which is a bit like primary school boys use nicknames to bully classmates. As soon as the nickname sounded, a large number of students began to make fun of the bullied. The more angry and helpless the owner of the nickname, the more enjoyable the bullies are. Although this is just a small prank between children in the eyes of adults, and attributes it to the child as ignorant and just play for fun, this amateur cognition conceals bullying behavior and makes the bullies more and more unscrupulous and even proud of their ability to manipulate people. When it comes to masculism, words with similar properties such as March 8th, CMG, Jiandachitsu egg, and various phrases that imply a woman is a sex worker through similar shapes or pronunciations. If the above phrases are only coded and humiliating, then the phrases and sentences introduced next are more appealing. First of all, the feminist movement occurred in some countries, but it was soon retaliated by masculinists, counterattacked by masculinists, especially in Japan, whose culture originated from China. According to masculinists, Japanese men beat women because they were falsely accused and molested by women on the subway. Later, they found that the effect was surprisingly good, so this behavior was widely imitated by everyone and even perverts. Masculinists in China are looking forward to this situation in China. They compare it to the leading version or leading server of long-term operation games, and unite to spam the screen under the relevant events with version updates. Enter the advanced server. Accelerate. The industry with deep roots does not lack relevant stakeholders, and the scale of similar groups of speeches is astonishing, which of course strengthens the courage of imitators. Just like when someone questioned the authority of the order, the same person would quickly surround him and indirectly encourage him to challenge the authority and shake the arrogance of the existing order. In the comment section of the high school student secretly photographed a woman and then he was caught, some people threatened others to pardon the student who photographed the woman voyeuristically with the possibility of giving up on himself by force. The cases of taking voyeuristic photos, spreading rumors about female victims are rising exponentially. These powerful masculinistal groups are growing into a force that cannot be underestimated to stir up public opinion, and their populations are showing a trend of becoming younger. Of course, among these slogans, the most successful one is the homophone, changing right to boxing in Chinese, replacing feminism with woman boxing, and pile up a large number of negative news about the female group in the place where the word or word appears, including rumors, especially the stupid actions of women while fighting for their own rights and interests, training the public to connect the two, and even playing memes when women express their own expectation normally and narrate the relevant history, mocking the victims and the narrators to woman boxing, and destroy the atmosphere. This statement is both humiliating and appealing. First of all, to laymen, this word is completely unfamiliar and sounds like a boxing game. And like the malicious nickname mentioned above, it perfectly achieved the task of humiliating the bullies, relieving seriousness and helping the bullies get rid of their responsibilities. The perpetrator trained the bystanders to laugh to drown the grievance and anger of the bullies, and then shrugged his shoulders and spread his hands to pretend to be innocent. Didn't you hear the laughter? I said we are just playing. Its code nature is even more dangerous. The saying boxing is full of potential hints of physical violence, and inadvertently pulling the person's subconscious into the context of the Colosseum. You woman said this to me is equivalent to physical violence attacking me. In the future, the man will have sufficient reasons to attack back physically violently, and subtly completed the call to provoke the masculinistal group to attack women. In addition to the above, the slogans that use phrases to summarize the incidents of harming men benefiting women are also very popular, such as the case of a woman jumping off a car because the driver frequently changed lanes, resulting in the Hualala driver being sentenced, commonly known as the Hualala case. The case of a woman instigating her daughter to frame the cake shop owner's sexual assault, commonly known as the cake shop owner's case. The case of Xiao Huijun falsely accusing the boss of sexual harassment, referred to as the Xiao Huijun case. Zhai Xinqin blackmailing his boyfriend's huge compensation to cause his death, referred to as the Zhai Xinqin case. And there is also a woman suspected the man was secretly photographing because his flashing shoe upper, and called the police to check and did not find the secretly photographed. The man named Zhuai Feng Xiaoya claimed thousands of yuan in compensation from the women and asked the subway to publicly apologize, commonly known as Zhuai Feng Xiaoya case. By the same token, there are a normal Tan Love, Shangxi rape case after engagement, etc. Open the platform with most male users and you will find that there are always a large group of people repeating these crimes of women in a rosary style, as if this is a solemn and painful anniversary of Def Eaton, so that the masculinistal group urgently needs a victory to avenge the previous shame. The impression this tactic brings to people is similar to a large group of people who recite a series of repeated spells, singing war songs to women, including feminist groups. It doesn't matter the things they recite have authenticity or not. They always believe in another set of rhetoric that is different from the official ones. This makes their appeal always look like a beast bound by the existing order. As long as the chain is still tied to this beast, no matter how you comfort it, it still have blood-red eyes and prepare to break the chains at any time. Many people want to ignore this elephant in this room, but the beast's teeth grinding sounds like thunder, spewing out of the foul smell, and they would rush out of the darkness to eat a few people at any time, as if it was part of the darkness, making the chains fastened to its bobby look even more and more fragile. To put it bluntly, it means letting the public see the universal existence and extreme dangers of masculinistalists, the uncertainty of the object of their harm and the significance of the damage they may cause, out of fear of recognition and surrender to masculinity, and then join the masculinistal group to suppress women's rights. Therefore, masculinist thoughts, androcentric worldview, latriarchal ideology pay great attention to its own authoritarianism. They either likes to quote famous quotes or even dismantle and replace some words to pretend to be powerful, or pretend to advocates how patriotic and socialism are, and declare that all those who oppose themselves are capitalism and overseas forces. If the above statement is too complicated to understand, we can introduce the thinking system of the 5 elements to sort it out. Imagine a hard and dense material that can be made into a sharp blade, which can cut whatever is cut, and can be used to divide the world into 2. One is the self, the other is the other. One is beneficial to me, the other is against me. When faced with descriptions of gender contradictions, All masculinists are filters of praise and criticism based on their own short-term interests, and their understanding of the word materialization is the core manifestation of this. When a man steal, rob and cheat others to get women as sexual objects, some people will say that he is materializing women. When hearing this, the general thought may be, what did I do to be said to be materialized? What kind of behavior is materialized? How to prevent the occurrence of materialization? And come to understand the relevant causal relationship. But masculinists don't need to do this. They can extend their animal instincts from childhood. So their reaction is like a primary school student who hears criticism. He only understands that materialization does not seem to be a good word, so they kick up a fuss by nature. They capriciously change the word materialization into a bomb that which will trigger a large-scale criticizes from others after thrown on someone's head. They contribute to large-scale use of it, like women who ask for rights and money are materializing themselves. Only women who work more and require less deserve real feminist right. However, the internal logic of this statement is still to suppress women's rights and interests, and even package the labor value of female proletariat, and ask capitalists together to bargain on women's value as if it is the cabbage in supermarkets, and even turn the blame on women. It is because women are greedy, lying on the credit book of the previous generation of women and shamelessly demanding, which leads to this tragedy. After that, he did not forget to separate women with an invisible blade. It is only pitiful for countless hard-working and brave innocent women. It can be seen that the key words and means to maintain masculinistal group are division and cutting. Just like a person holding a knife. The male were born by cutting off the functions of their gestation and dividing out the gender. They only divide enemies and their companions, divide praise and criticism according to their own short-term interests. Rely on the standards of whether you obey or not, how much value can you bring to them to divide the female group, the ruled. Sharp knives made of dense matter are surrounded one by one, forming a sharp cage with inner walls, making it difficult for the besieged to touch and escape. Just like what the three body men did to the Earthlings, they monitored them with Zaphan, blockade their technology, trapped their mind, and later drove everyone to Australia to siege humans in time and space, and prevented them from transcending. Just as patriarchal group never forget to keep monitoring and suppressing groups that fight for women's right. Lu Xun summarized this vividly. All countries and all religions have many strange rules. They regard women as an unlucky animal, threaten her to make her obey like slaves. This basically invincible dense matter corresponds to the energy form metaphorized by rigidness, Jin, among the 5 forms. Solid, abiding, can be made into sharp blades, pokes, cuts, bringing pain to the opposite side and weakening its power. It can also be made into shields that suppress, resist any force, and shield screens and walls that isolate something. Corresponding to what the masculinistalists did above, we can understand why Zhuang Yan became a science fiction goddess, because Jin Shang Shui, the forced oppression, only allows the passage of the compulsive thing that does not disobey it to go through. Zhuang Yan is weak and obedient, without any offensiveness, and has no ability to protect herself in front of Luo Ji, a man who longs for her. Therefore, many men like such women. The past education also encouraged girls to become such women. The wife follows the husband with downcast eyes, meek and obedient. But women, as creatures, certainly have their own instincts and will not be unconditional obedient. So the masculinist smashed her backbone of resistance, tied her hands and feet, cut off the neck of the transgressor, blocked their route of escape, trapped their mind, and shut out the potential resistor's voice. Logical thinking, route of information transmission, escape, and even route of technological evolution, biological evolution, these linear extension concepts are the energy forms metaphorized by stem mu in the 5 elements. The energy forms of rigidness, Jin, can form a certain restraint on them. The Matilda effect mentioned above can be extended to editing and shielding in the information dissemination methods used by masculinistal society to build collective subconsciousness. The most important thing is not what you see, but what you don't see or what you subconsciously ignore. Taking the public opinion on the gender conflict between the 2 sides before and after the keynote of the Datong rape case after engagement as an example, the judgment of the incident has brought a significant impact in the huge masculinistal group, but the material foundation of masculinistalism is particularly solid after all. This group of people can still satirize everywhere to go against the official notice, asserting that this is a false accusation case and regard it as the key evidence to prove that the government's favoritism to women, and are crying around, which has made people surprised at masculinistalists' high attainments in communication science. They are best at using phrases to establish conditioned reflexes to domesticate the masses and guide their emotions. Phrases can be edited or distorted. Observing the gender contradiction public opinion field in recent years, a core phrase that the masculinistal group loves the most is false accusation. If you hear this word and think that it is fixedly associated with a woman falsely accusing a man of sexual harassment and assault, which means that the masculinistalists have successfully tamed you. According to China's gender contradiction public opinion field, let's simplify the methods and steps of domestication into 3 stages. Step 1. Focus on promoting conclusive real events, such as Xiao Huijun falsely accusing the boss of sexual harassment. Zhu Jun was falsely accused of sexual harassment. A woman instigated her daughter to falsely accuse the owner of a cake shop, and the masculinistal group would use keywords such as Xiao Huijun, Zhu Jun, and cake shop owner to promote and make a large-scale publicity and hype, which would make the popularity higher than the incident of sexual harassment from a man to the women, just like a group of burly men yelling every day, "John owes me money." Then there is the second step, mixing false information into a large amount of real information. One is to spread rumors of false accusations from others, and expand the scale of false accusations in publicity. The masculinistal group began to suspect or directly accuse the woman of false accusation, and plead for the man who molested a woman. Of course, most of them were half-joking but malicious speculation. For example, the case was described as the man was just joking, but the woman made him look bad. The man didn't give the woman enough money, etc. Which can be compared to the unilateral saying of the burly men, "Not only John owed me money, but Jack, who lives in the same community with him, also owed me money," but the authenticity of this statement is unknown. The second is to expand the definition of false accusation, such as someone suspecting a man secretly photographed, even if nobody reported the case. It was only suspicion and someone asked the management to check and prove it. It would be defined as false accusation by the masculinistal group, which is typical of Zhuifeng Xiaoya case. It's like that burly men shouted, "David, who is in the same community as John and Jack, has not paid back the money. David did borrow money, but it was not overdue." After being said like this, his reputation became bad. The success of this method is due to the Zhang Wei spread rumors of secretly filming of migrant workers on the subway. It provides a key help for masculinistal power in the public opinion warfare. It can be said that without this incident, the masculinistal power can't achieve today's success. In gender contradiction in China, Zhang Wei is a very perfect perpetrator. First of all, she was no possibility to be secretly photographed to post on pornographic websites with trousers on. Secondly, she checked the man's mobile phone. Without catching the key evidence, she still asserted that he photographed voyeuristically and spread rumors about him in the network. As a migrant worker, the man is doing hard work with a low income. He takes photos more out of curiosity about new things like Subway, which reminds people of their parents who have worked hard to raise them but cannot keep up with the times. It accurately hits the soft part of most people's hearts and make them feel helpless and sour sadness. In the eyes of such a friendly, simple, hardworking and clumsy migrant worker, Zhang Wei is undoubtedly a towering intellectual figure. Just when he was squatting at the bottom of the high-end transportation vehicle in a big city, this colossal intellectual figure gave him a blow, searched his mobile phones, and accused him of secretly taking pictures without finding key evidence, which seemed to constitute a landscape where postmodern people deny pre-modern survivors, showing the unreasonable conviction and expulsion of the builders by the enjoyers of urban infrastructure. So the criticism of Zhang Wei came one after another, and the popularity of the whole thing was pushed up. Mothers began to remind their son not to point the camera at others on public transportation. The masculinistal group are indispensable naturally in an indignant crowd. They will not miss any opportunity to fire at the female group. As a woman, Zhang Wei's attitude towards a man as a domineering superior undoubtedly tramples on the most important male dignity of the masculinist. The targets she accused were the workers' and peasants' brothers representing the soul of the republic, so the incident also happened to mobilize the bureaucracy-induced PTSD in the Chinese people's heart, so that masculinists can very successfully combine female rights, closely and firmly with labels such as petty bourgeoisie, bureaucrats, unequal beneficiaries in a society with unequal wealth distribution, snob, gold digger, and betrayers of the workers' and peasants' alliance, and spend a lot of effort to condition the masses until the narrative replacement was completed. Of course, in this process, the main role is men's overwhelming violence compared to women, the exclusion, even ostracization of women in the distribution of power and resources, and the control of means of production and production technology completed with aforementioned two. At around this time, slogans such as learning from Japanese and Korean men, samurai duel, and version update, which imply that men suspected of photographing voyeuristically or sexual harassment should counterattack with violence, began to explode and become popular. At the same time, because Zhang Wei is from Sichuan University, some companies announced that they would not recruit graduates from Sichuan University, which has received widespread support from some netizens. Therefore, the condition reflex domestication from masculinistalism was successful, and the sign of success was the popularity of the Zhuifeng Xiaoya incident. A man nicknamed Zhuifeng Xiaoya was suspected of voyeuristically photographing with a miniature pinhole spy camera by two women on the subway because they found that the man's shoes were flashing, so they asked the man to prove his innocence by taking off shoes. The man was deeply angry about the incident and believed that he had been slandered for no reason. So he wrote an article to accuse the two women of false accusations and cried about his being accused mistakenly. The relevant text was spread everywhere by the masculinistal group and emphasized the embarrassment and helplessness of the man taking off his shoes and stepping on the cold floor in full view of the public, which causing his social death. The man also sued the two women and the subway company, demanding that the women pay thousands of yuan in compensation and the subway company play the woman's apology statement in a loop, which was rejected by the court, defining the matter as the man maliciously expanded the influence. The trial result made the male supremacists very dissatisfied, and the official announcement was different from the man's description, such as the man took off his shoes in the police office, it was the last subway that day, and there were no other passengers in the carriage, etc. The incident became evidence that the government and judicial institutions favor women, according to male supremacists. Male supremacists achieved an important victory from then, and large-scale distrust of the judicial institutions began to arise. Therefore, the dissatisfaction caused by subsequent verdicts of the Fat Cat's suicide, Wang Jiejia's murder and Datong rape case in public opinion, is nothing more than a proof of the rise of male chauvinism and its narrative success. As a result, slogans such as Leaning Tower and female-based society were widely circulated, and rumors that showed the stupidity and low quality of female individuals were abnormally pushed up. It is allowing women to eat at the table that caused the chaos. We shouldn't have let women be independent at the beginning. What Confucius said is right. The slogans about regret over reform and women's liberation, and the inspiration of feudal order like these became popular. The masculinists began to promote de-responsibility, be invincible people, advocated learning from the extremist in Zhuhai, retaliated against the judge through indiscriminate attacks to create social panic, and forcing the public to put pressure on women. Related expressions were flooded everywhere. This is the third stage, which is about the same as a bunch of burly men pounding the glass while shouting, people in the community with John, Jack, David often owe money and don't pay it back. Don't make friends with them in the future. Thus force more and more people to join them and exclude the residents of that community. Because the previous article mentioned the existence of the fractal from gender to the hierarchical structure of human society, this process of conditioned reflex domesticating the masses is very capable, and can even be used as a classic formula for communication. So what does this have to do with the rigidness gene in the 5 elements? First of all, the blade made of it has a powerful slicing ability, which is manifested in behavior as a segmentation of a group. One group of people attacks another group of people with a certain identity, and builds a sense of bonding. Next is the mechanism of conditioned reflex. People will build reaction loops with repetitive and easy-to-memorize fragmentary information to cut off logical thinking. Just like under the overwhelming propaganda of masculinistalists, when you see the word false accusation, you will automatically think that a man is convicted by a woman for no reason. Your body will automatically react and create relevant situations. Male supremacists will also summarize the success of defeating female narratives with the classic story, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. But this is precisely a mirror that reflects their values. To summarize the story of the boy who cried wolf, a boy understood that when he shouts wolf, the adults will put aside the work on hand and run to drive the wolf away. Therefore, he repeatedly cried wolf, with no wolf around to deceive the adults to come and have fun. Over time, the child gradually became disgusted by the villagers. Finally, he encountered a real wolf, but because of the repeated deceptions, the signal for help was ignored, and he was eventually eaten by the wolf. This story is intended to warn readers not to exploit people's trust, especially when their own safety needs protection. But according to some or even many people, the ending of this story has become an advocacy, advocating that when people see such a person in a certain group, they should isolate the entire group where the person is, and even encourage everyone to harm the people in this group, and they would not say villagers who report there was a wolf anymore, which has constituted a distortion of values. First of all, to the entire village, wolves are hostile forces that endanger the personal safety and production and life of villagers. Judging from the fact that the boy reported that there were wolves, then the villagers would immediately interrupt their work and come. The wolves wandered around the village frequently, so warning and even elimination of wolves must be the first priority. The boy in the story lied to report the wolf for fun should be punished. But women who suspect that some people photograph them voyeuristically are basically not for fun, but are really worried that their privacy and others will be violated, and the photos may even be used to spread rumors. But the wolf disaster cannot be ignored. If turning a blind eye to the wolf disaster becomes a common choice for everyone, it only means that a considerable number of villagers have not regarded killing wolves as their top priority from the heart, but instead covets the power of wolves, hoping to become a complicitor of wolves to oppress other villagers and science them into submission, and exacerbate the rift within the village community. After that, by amplifying a handful of false reports, paltry against the backdrop of wolf attacks, they instilled more fear of human error than of the wolves themselves to shirk their and the wolves' responsibility. In reality, cases of men secretly filming, harassing, or sexually assaulting women, while female victims fear gossip and dare not speak out, occur everywhere. The perpetrators often act with impunity, and the related industries are deeply entrenched. The long-standing oppression of women in a patriarchal society is the root cause of the women's heightened reactions. It is why many initially side with the women. The problem originates from the masculinistal system, yet it is twisted into special treatment for women to smear the female community. It is lamentable how consistently effective the masculinistal tactics of distorting the truth are. If we truly want to solve the problem at its root, public opinion should guide people to combat the industries of voyeuristically filming and human trafficking. Why let public opinion focus on attacking women and silencing potential victims? The only possible outcome, apart from emboldening these shadowy industries, is unimaginable. Japan and South Korea have already succeeded in this regard. Why, as a socialist country, does China have a significant portion of its population learning from these capitalist countries, even one of them with a history of fascist militarism that invaded China? When we piece together the fragmented information cut apart by patriarchal society and examine the term special treatment, according to male supremacists, it becomes clear. They never care about cause and effect or logic. They revel in the pleasure of being a man to dominate women with their strength, enjoying the thrill of causing trouble and shifting all consequences onto women, while using force to intimidate dissenters. In the eyes of male supremacists, the world should be a continuation of such pleasure. It is why they despise feminism, labeling feminists as sinners who obstruct human continuation, and anti-humanists. Immediately tear up the system, overturn the table and shed responsibility, loudly blaming feminism for datering beautiful traditions. Only then may people see the truth. All that sacred rhetoric and beautiful tradition are nothing but useless hypocritical decorations. So in the past, theoretically, as long as living conditions weren't so dire that women's body couldn't endure them, males could control survival resources to turn females into breeding machines, where population production efficiency depended solely on how tolerable those living conditions were. But before the first industry revolution, the ceiling of productivity was fixed, leaving society's limited capacity to withstand sudden crises when natural disasters struck, whether droughts, floods, or locust plagues, and reached a certain severity, social order would collapse. People relied more on plundering to secure resources, with only the strongest individuals surviving, and this strife further intensified resource scarcity. Vast territories inevitably faced power struggles between central and local authorities, leading to the adoption of highly centralized systems that prioritized efficiency and suppressed dissent downward. Resentment accumulated, and aggression and brutality trickled down along the hierarchy of exploitation, from the powerful to the weak. This, perhaps, is why feudal family morals, such as the 3 Obediences and 4 Virtues, biographies of exemplary women, 3 Bonds and 5 Constants, and 24 filial exemplars, grew increasingly extreme, rigidifying hierarchies of gender, male superiority over female, and age, elders over the young. Moreover, the ancient marriage system inherently involved the exploitation of families with daughters by those with sons, driven by notions like raising daughters yields low returns, daughters are money-losing burdens, and a married-off daughter is like spilled water, gone forever. Families reduced investment in raising girls, resorting to abandonment or even infanticide. This further elevated female mortality rates. As reproducive grew scarcer, a large population of unmarried men, deprived of outlets for their aggression, became unretrained individuals, worsening public security and intensifying survival pressures. Whether for pioneering new lands or defending clan interests, more male labor was demanded, deepening the vicious cycle. The patriarchal society, in response, squeezed even more relentlessly from women's reproductive capacity. Husbands kept their wives pregnant in relentless succession, until a son was born. Mother-in-law joined in persecuting their daughters-in-law, venting the grievances they had endured as young brides. Beyond giving daughters names like Zhaodi, summon a young brother, or Ting, stop their mothers from giving birth to girls. Superstitious for male heirs, people even resorted to infanticide as a form of dark ritual, aiming to terrify the souls of girls and deter them from reborn into the family. Women engaged in a grim arms race to bear sons, spawning pseudoscientific remedies like eating sour foods during pregnancy ensures a boy. Villagers fueled this competition, further skewing resource distribution to favor boys while neglecting girls. Families with newborn sons were celebrated by fanfare, rewarded with farm produce or land, while those with daughters received nothing at all. It was common for families to bankrupt themselves bearing multiple daughters before getting their coveted son. Then they'd squeeze from these older sisters, slashing investment in their upbringing, forcing them to drop out and work young, marrying them off early, all while exploiting the resulting gender imbalance to damn exorbitant bride prices. The cruel irony. That very windfall would later be drained paying their son's own marriage dowry. At worst, they'd resort to wife leasing, renting out a wife's fertility to those families desperate for male heirs, a practice that today manifests in surrogacy. In short, the revolution of sex-based reproductive strategies in the human ecological niche inevitably led to a patriarchal history built on exploiting female fertility and labor. However, Western civilization, driven by pressures of insufficient local resources, pioneered the first industrial revolution, redirecting developmental pressures outward through external plunder. Yet Western societies never fully abandoned internal oppression, as seen in historical witch hunts and religious dogma like abortion bans. Of course, the simplistic East-West dichotomy is imprecise. More accurately, a civilization's geographic starting point determines its developmental trajectory. Initial abundance is both a blessing and a curse, especially for civilizations in relatively isolated regions, like plant roots trapped in a confined pot, coiling along the inner walls in endless loops, which mirrors the cyclical patterns of history, embodying the 5 elements dynamic of rigidness restraining stem. Jean Camus. Stem mu represents the developmental path of continuity, whereas rigidness Jean embodies not only the primal instincts of biological bestiality, but also the pride and unkindness of patriarchal conservatism, a rigid adherence to the status quo and an eagerness to imitate antiquity at every turn. The patriarchal system's relentless exploitation of female reproductive capacity has fostered a production model dependent on demographic dividends, whose backward nature is glaringly evident. Dense populations lead to relative scarcity of per capita resources in a given region, fueling intense competition. This drains the ruled class of energy, fragmenting their collective power and diverting attention from the ruling elite. By depressing labor costs and transmuting contradictions between rulers and the ruled into infighting among the oppressed, the system mirrors the exploitative tactics of Xiangyang's art of controlling the people, a strategy we previously dissected. Once conditions permitted, it is inevitable that a rigid system will confine a civilization in a cage, Precisely why the first industrial revolution didn't emerge on this land. There was simply no incentive to invent labor-replacing machinery when the combined cost of development and adoption far outweighed the price of human toil. This is the domino effect of suppressing women's rights. It inflicts suffering on the people, especially women, because such development prioritizes endless human production over human well-being. Yet ironically, this very system became a pillar of China's modern rise. On the one hand, the ratio of men to women is extremely high. The surplus of men funnel abundant cannon fodder into wars. On the other hand, as a standard answer for the geography exam, the excess population provides abundant supply of cheap labor and a huge market that capital needs most. But an excessively growing population will inevitably lead to a relative scarcity of jobs, while the persistent gender imbalance, male surplus, further accelerates social disorder. This is why simplistic East-West dichotomies are inaccurate. Just as the West never focuses solely on external exploitation while abandoning domestic repression, those regions clinging to archaic feudal brutality, often due to geographic isolation, are never content with merely oppressing local women. Beyond the textbook answer of preventing female resource outflow, they inevitably resort to illegal means to secure cheap sexual exploitation and offspring. As Lu Sun observed, to patriarchal minds, romance and marriage are merely more expensive ways to purchase sexual access. This reality is reflected in works like the film Blind Mountain, while real-world cases include the infamous The Chained Woman with 8 Children incident and the government-documented Sheltered Female Postgraduate case. Reports suggest significant efforts to suppress these exposures, revealing these victims as mere fragments of a far larger iceberg. You might be shocked at why some always shield such illegal confinement and rape, why villagers unite so fiercely to protect these vile interests, even whitewashing inhuman acts as providing shelter, then shamelessly claiming, "We use neutral language in the official statement due to unclear details." But the truth is simple: tribal solidarity. Villagers, bound by the relational web of their insular society, instinctively side with their own rather than justice. It's the same logic by which patriarchal oppression, despite its blood-stained history, gets defended reflexively. The moment slogans like "feminism is anti-China" or "feminism is a petty bourgeois game" are shouted, they weaponize distortion and stigma, silencing dissent with precision. Suffering women are recast as the cost of rebellion, their pain glorified as inevitable. The old playbook repeats: erase every chance for women to defy men.